Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Grind. Now, I thought I would do a more proper episode of The Grind that was less distracting. And, funny story, I was actually gonna do this episode in Overwatch. And I actually just tried to record it before recording this one. Turns out Overwatch is far more distracting as a game to play while trying to talk. So, I scrapped that one because like 95% of it was me trying to survive in Overwatch, and the other 5% was me actually trying to tell the story. So, yeah, we're gonna try that again, but this time we're gonna do it in Warframe, and we're gonna try and, you know, we're not gonna be messing with any kind of weird explosives that should distract me too much. It should be a lot more laid back. Right now I'm just doing a Void Traces run. Also just going through the Void because the Void usually has some cool stuff. But yeah, I guess we'll get to the topic because I can actually talk at my own pace, because this game is not as frantic as Overwatch. Yeah, the topic I want to talk about today, which is probably obviously spoiled by the title of the video, I thought I would talk about something that comes up quite often, I guess because I do Let's Delve. That is my my origin story. my origins. Unfortunately, it's not as exciting as a Batman origin story or anything, but I figured I would tell it anyway for I guess official purposes. You know, if anyone asks in the future, you can direct them to this video, and they'll be able to be like, ah, that was a story. So anyway, yeah, so started learning programming, and I'm gonna put that in quotes. I would quote it if I wasn't playing a game, but quote unquote programming when I got my first computer, personal computer, that is, like that was my own. I was in middle school sometime. I was probably, I don't know, 11, 12, I don't know. But yeah, the first thing that I did was I started to learn how to code websites. And I know out there that's probably just cringe for some people. You know, HTML is not a programming language. Yeah, I get it, it's a markup language. But it was very important for me to have learned that, because it actually taught me a lot about the way that not only I learned how to code to this day, but it was also the gateway to me expanding outwards and learning other programming or other actual programming languages. This dude is in the air. Overpowered, I swear to God, those guys will just take a whole bunch of damage, and some of them will just drain your energy like there's no tomorrow, and you're just like, God, just send me some help and get rid of these green goos of annoyance. Anyway, getting sidetracked already. It's yeah, so my start was learning how to program HTML, and the way that I learned really was I would go to websites that I thought looked cool. I would look at their code, because back in the day, we're talking back in the day where like the most complicated that code would get is maybe some early CSS, but the most complicated thing was like tables, and just to show how dated that is, very few websites, if any, still use tables to this day. So yeah, that was my origin. Like so I would look at a website that I thought looked cool, and I would learn the way that it functions by looking at the code. So I'd be like, okay, this is part of this, and this does this, and it was just experimentation from there on. And what's funny is I don't even know if there were like better programs to use back in the day, but for the longest time I would code websites in Notepad. Like, yes, Notepad, you know that thing you probably open once in a while to like jot down a number or something? Yeah, I used to use that to build websites. So yeah, that's really where I got my start. And let's see what's up here. So yeah, that's about where I started. Great, this is a dead end. Thank you. But yeah, so you know, I got my start in websites. I branched out from there, learned CSS, learned some JavaScript. Eventually I would branch out to get this, and again, this is gonna date me quite a bit. Around the time that I was learning to build websites was also when Flash was starting to become the hip new trend. Yeah, that, you know, the Adobe Flash as it is now, it used to be called Macromedia Flash back in the day. Macromedia doesn't even exist anymore. Adobe bought them out. But yeah, so Flash started becoming very, very popular. So I started to learn ActionScript, but I didn't start learning ActionScript to make games. I learned ActionScript actually to build websites, because there was a time, imagine there was a time where full websites were built in Flash. And yes, indeed, this was back in the day where it was all about the presentation and not really about the functionality. So yeah, if you wanted to browse a website, sometimes you would have to deal with all the transitions, all the crazy effects that, you know, Flash allowed quote-unquote designers to do. But anyway, I'm turning off on my my origin story here. But yeah, so I guess technically my first foray into legit, quote-unquote legit programming was JavaScript and ActionScript. And before, you know, someone doesn't consider ActionScript programming, but whatever. But yeah, that was my start. That was, again, and that's all thanks to HTML being like the gateway. You know, learning HTML encouraged me to learn more things about how the web works, and you know what was necessary to work within that industry. I even learned PHP strictly because, you know, I needed to know it for web design purposes. So, you know, as much as people like to bag on the fact that HTML isn't a programming language, I would say it's like the perfect gateway language to learning other proper actual, you know, programming languages. But that's just me. That's just my personal story, my personal opinion. But I always feel like I have to go to bat for HTML, because I feel like HTML gets a bad rap. You know, it might be like, you know, the same way that GameMaker gets a bad rap sometimes because, oh, it's got a drag and drop function. That doesn't excuse it from being a, you know, at least a passable engine. So, you know, why you gotta hate, man? You know, the way people learn things, the way they learn it. Why aren't we just embracing and encouraging people to learn how to code at all? You know, I'm gonna cut out all this rambling, this nerd rambling that's going on. Yeah, so from there, my first foray into quote-unquote game programming, I guess, is I tried out one of the early versions of GameMaker. But back then, it wasn't really necessarily known for, like, oh, you can use the GML to build a game. It was much more focused on the whole drag and drop functionality. You know, that was the main draw, the main focus of GameMaker back in the day. So I remember trying out the tutorial, being like, oh, this is okay, but it's not really what I want. You know, I would like to. My whole thing was I was hoping that it was going to be like a more simplified language to like C# or C++ or something, you know. But for what it was interesting. It was a nice, you know, introduction to anyone who wanted to learn programming, I guess. But it really wasn't for me. So yeah, for the longest time I didn't mess with GameMaker. I just, you know, I did my own thing. Worked as a freelance designer for a while. Got tired of the direction that front-end design has gone. Not gonna get into it, because I don't want to keep having to cut out giant chunks of me getting all nerdy up in here. Maybe I'll save that for another time. My opinions on the web design industry. Nonetheless, moving on. I picked up GameMaker 8 just on a whim, so I wanted to start learning something new. And I figured if I was gonna learn anything new, I wanted it to be something related to gaming, that I could somehow contribute to gaming in some way. Like, if I could just make a basic game featuring my own assets, you know, that would be great. So, you know, by the time GameMaker 8 came out, you know, GameMaker was a lot more popular. It had a lot more documentation out there, a lot more tutorials. It was still pretty rough, and I'm sure there were tutorials pre GameMaker 8. But I remember back in the day, a lot of tutorials online, like on YouTube, was like someone with like a desktop recorder, and instead of recording commentary through a mic, they would have Notepad open and they would just type all of their commentary into the Notepad document. And that was easily the most frustrating time, I think, to learn anything via a YouTube video. So, you know, there's a lot of people who complain about the way that people do YouTube tutorials these days. It was far more rough back in the day. Back in the day before people got mics and just decent attempts at production. You know, can you imagine Let's Dev if all of my commentary was done via Notepad? You know, I'm sure that anybody who may not like my voice would appreciate that, but you know, that would be a nightmare to watch. Just like you're just like and there was no editing, you know, the Notepad writing was not sped up in any way. It was real time watching someone type out, okay, this is what you need to do next. But anyway, let's move on. So yeah, by the time GameMaker 8 came out, you know, GameMaker documentation was a lot easier to find. Tutorials were much more focused, and you could pretty much find what you needed to get you started at least. And you know, the community was pretty great, pretty open to helping those who wanted or who needed help. And it actually kind of continues to this day. It's great to see that, you know, there are still GameMaker communities out there who are like, hey, if you need help, you need someone to coach you or help you understand certain aspects of GameMaker, you can probably find those people. So yeah, I learned a lot more about how GameMaker works. I learned about how GML works, and I really dug it. I really got into it, and I started just making dumb games, making small games, making fan games. And yeah, that was my first real foray into making GameMaker games. And I guess as they say, the rest is history. I should probably mention at this point I'd also tried other languages, but I think the fact that GameMaker was strictly meant for making games is what actually drew me towards it and to keep with it. Eventually I started doing YouTube. God dang, you stupid statue shooting me. Eventually I started doing YouTube, and I was like, at some point I was like, you know what, maybe I'll try to get better at making games, but why don't I also document the what's the word I'm looking for here? Journey is the word I was looking for. Very basic word that I could have should have been able to think of, but yes. So I wanted to document my journey, and that's pretty much how Let's Dev began. And honestly, that's it really. That's the story. That's I warned you guys, it wasn't a very interesting story. I will say that you know, the whole reason that I got into programming and everything was I just wanted to learn it. You know, people often ask, you know, how do I get started? Honestly, the best answer I can give you is just go for it. There's probably never gonna be a perfect time for you to be like, you know, okay, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm gonna do it, these are the steps that I can take to do it. Nah, man, you just gotta go for it. If you want to make a game, find out what you want to do, look it up, and see what you're gonna need to make it happen, and just make it happen. It's not gonna happen overnight, but you know, if you take the necessary steps, you take it one step at a time, and know that you're gonna fail on the way to what you want to do. Just know that it's gonna be a learning experience, and just go for it. Don't be afraid to just try. I mean, like currently, you know, I want to try and improve my knowledge of how 3D works in GameMaker and see what kind of crazy weird things I can come up with in that engine. And you know I'm gonna fail at a lot of the things that I attempt. I know it's probably gonna take me 2 to 3 times as long to do something that would take me maybe 5 to 10 minutes in a 2D space, but I'm okay with that. You know, I'm okay with the learning experience. I'm okay with the fact that it's not going to happen overnight, but you know, you just got to be willing to learn, because even something like HTML, it teaches you certain things about like hierarchy, how things are going to function in a certain fashion. It teaches you a lot of basics. It's not exactly going to teach you how to make a video game, but it was, in my journey, it was the starting point that Jesus, they took over 2 points at once. So that's really the best advice I can give you, is if you are at all curious about learning how to program or anything, just look it up, man. Just look up what you want to look up. If you want to learn how to do C#, the first thing you're probably gonna want to look up is how do you do C? How does C# work? How do I do the C#? You know, you're like, okay, I'm gonna have to learn how libraries work, or I'm gonna have to find, maybe I'll look for an open source project. Maybe that open source project doesn't do what you want it to do, but if it can teach you a little bit more about what you're working with, then why not? You know, take every experience as a learning experience and just go for it. Again, that's the best advice I can give anybody out there who's looking to learn something like programming. Or just go for it, man. You look up some tutorials and see if GameMaker's engine is for you. If it's not, then maybe move on to Unity. Maybe Unity will be more your bag. And you know, just again, look up tutorials, look up the things you want to learn. If it's like, if the tutorial that you looked up has like weird terms that you don't understand, look those up. If you don't know what a conditional is, for example, a very basic coding term, you know, conditionals are something you're going to be using a lot in programming. If you don't know what a conditional is, look up programming conditionals, you know, and that'll help you understand, okay, a programming conditional is this, okay, this is the context you're using it in this video, okay, you know, again, that's just one step at a time. And when I say one step at a time, I really mean like take it one step at a time. Like, don't overwhelm yourself with information. Try to consolidate your knowledge, because if you try to learn too much at one time, then you're gonna be like, this is too hard, I'm not understanding any of what I'm learning, I'm wasting my time. So you gotta compartmentalize. You need to take it nice and slow. Let's just say, let's just put it that way. I cannot speak today, I cannot say words. But yeah, that's my origin story. That's my advice for anyone who wants to get into it. And honestly, I wouldn't even consider myself a very good programmer at that. Like, a lot of things I should be learning and I should be retaining as information, I tend not to remember it. How is this dog conflict? Or cat, sorry. It's Kavat, it's cat. Like, what is a cat gonna do? I bet that cat doesn't know how to push buttons. How are they gonna take back the control point? It's a lie, dude. That's a big old lie. I'm starting to realize that, considering that my story wasn't that interesting, this video might be a lot shorter than I anticipated. I apologize. I'll try to think of a more solid topic next time. A more meaty topic, that is. And you know, hopefully this video will be longer next time. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like. Let me know if you guys want to see more. This was more akin to what I wanted to do the first time around, but I got so distracted last time. This time around, I was far less distracted. Unfortunately, the meat for the discussion was far leaner than I anticipated. I'm gonna stop blabbering now and wrap this up. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.